Slight smile emoji. What's up, Veek? Do I even want to know what that reaction spells out anyway? Hydra 3, no. Reasonable. And here I expected Fagudo to do that. Oh wait, this is the wrong profile. It's been a while since I've worked on Hydra, man. So, what I'm thinking for this map, here's an idea, a radical change proposed. What if we just eradicate Zaz entirely? Just get rid of him. I feel like that might benefit us. For one, this map feels very cramped. So I think by deleting his base and then sort of opening up more of this area to be high dirt so that there's more of a natural inclination for player 2 to take this base. It still leaves player 1 further out, but I think that's fine. Like I don't have a problem with that placement. I don't know. I've been thinking about that. I feel like that might be a good way to make this map feel a little bit less cramped. It's still going to feel cramped no matter what, because it's 6 players on a tiny map. It's just that it's going down from... Wait. It would be 5 players without Zaz. So it would be 1 less. It would be a 2v2v1. Yes, Alexander. How's my feelings about Mapcraft? I think it was fun. It was fun playing everybody's maps. I definitely spent a long time on yours, Veek. And... maybe I would have been... Like, if it hadn't taken me so many retries because of the AI's nature to hoard its money until it was attacked and needed to spend it all on defense. Also, your base layouts were really fucked up for green, so he had like 6 tanks in between all of his production structures. And they couldn't get out, but they were also unstoppable. Like, I could not move my units close to them. And so, like, by the point where I had invested that much money into trying to kill him and didn't get anywhere with it, everybody else had already expanded a million times, all the other AIs. And so it was impossible for me to actually, like, progress from the map. From that point, I would have just been overwhelmed eventually. But also, because of the attacks were so slow to get going, like, only in the late game did we see Danny's attacks get to any point where it was actually threatening. Because of that sort of weird mechanic that was going on, where the attacks were so small at the early stages, it's like you couldn't stop the AI really from doing insane shit, but you also, like, they would eventually defeat you, and they were inevitable. and unstoppable. So that was like a concern of mine anyway, looking at it. Yeah, but you also know what to expect for your map. So, like, I had no idea what to expect, and I was also put in a forward position where my ally was doing nothing after like 30 minutes. I think if my ally had actually done something, then it would have been fine. I should have checked how many resources that he had at the end, or she had, because it was bear blower. But yeah, that was definitely a problem. Oh yeah, I forgot this whole map was reconstructed manually. Fuck. I don't want to have to go tile hunting. Don't make me do it. They're making me do it. I want to break that up somehow. Don't actually know what to do with that. What's up, Renato? Was layout better in what way? I feel like I just dribbled water all over myself, but there's no wet anywhere, so whatever. You talking about this base right here? Or are you talking about the mineral only? I feel like the mineral only is in no man's land in terms of defendability. There's so much rocky ground everywhere. So either I need to make it like easier to protect, or I need to throw a geyser on here. I'll probably do a little bit of the easier to protect one, and then throw like a 2,000 gas geyser in there or something. Yeah, that's what I was answering Alexander's question really quickly about mine, but I know that you were asking about your crap. I think wait, what? Let me solve this terrain puzzle, and then I'll take another look at the questions. Oh. Wait. No, never mind. I did it. All by myself. If only I didn't have to do that. But I do. Definitely some pretty big layout changes going to be happening. All right, so if you're talking about the map layout and not base layouts, then yeah, I think it was a lot better. Because of the fact that I had a lot more room to move around. There's still a lot of problem areas, like if purple had had any number of actual units, there were so many areas of the map that he could have annihilated me with. That were just down to like insane defender's advantage spots. That I would take a look at. Like there's a little ridge, like right behind one of his expansions, I think. And it was particularly annoying to deal with. But outside of a few areas, that and rock space, he had an area where it was completely impossible for him it was like bad for him to actually build. It was the base that you had him set up on the low ground, but it was like a structure. The resources were on a structure, a high ground of some sort. Like that one was really bad for aggressing into and pushing into in general. Did you get destroyed? See if I can recover it. Nope. It's all gone. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it was like an innate advantage for him with no drawbacks. I think it was really bad for him because of the fact that he couldn't, like, you want to use that to place siege tanks and turrets and stuff to use as defensive emplacements, but they're covered in resources. And there's no good way, like, if that was an area where, I don't really know how to describe it, but if it was an area like this where there's there's a ground path, and then like there's a south and north path. In that sense, maybe then it could be pretty interesting how that plays out. Like, then you could see an argument for going one way or another with it. But yeah, as it stands, it's pretty it's just pretty shitty for him to have to deal with that, and pretty shitty for the player to have to engage with it after the fact. IMO. Alright. I think we're okay in this area now. Got some Todd-foolery. Is that his natural? Yeah, that whole area. I'll just open up the map. Do I need the MPQ? I guess probably because of the custom tiles. I don't know what you did to the shadows, man. Anyway. So yeah, this is really low efficiency, so he's going to be getting way less returns than he would if this was a conventional setup. And the fact that he can't use this in any way for a defensive advantage means that it's almost like, even though you're placing high ground there, it's actually more of a nuisance, like a hindrance, than it is a benefit. Whereas control over high ground is supposed to give you some sort of reward. But in order to actually safely mine from this, you need to secure the surrounding low ground. And you can't really do anything. I mean, I don't know if you told the AI to like station tanks at these exact locations or something with guard commands. That would maybe offset it if it was at a high enough priority and it was happening reliably. Then he could use it as a way to aid his home front against the Zerg / Terran that you have up here. But even with that, it's like, if these resources were on the low ground instead, and there was like a reverse ramp here, and the south facing ramps would be over here. There's one north ramp here, maybe another north ramp up here. That even though that's less convenient and like almost like you're almost you're like inviting the Zerg to go up there. Then at least when Rock controls this area, he actually has more of an advantage. He gets mining done in a faster manner than before. He like more efficiently, and he can take advantage of the high ground. Whereas in this case, he can't really do that in any way. Tanks and Hunger, like over here on the opposite end. Yeah, I mean, that's what you would have to do, though. You have to, like, set up shop over here. And if Danny's constantly moving throughout the area, it's going to be pretty difficult for him. This was the strip I was talking about earlier. Wait, where is it? Yeah. This little area right here was really annoying to break through. Also, your ramp is fucked. Should be one. Is this even a doodad? No. It should be one tile over. Like so. I didn't even see if he made them. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's because the path, he can't put his command center close enough to the resources, as close as he would if they were on low ground because of the buildability. And then also the fact that the workers have to go in through that way with the ramp in the way. Especially for gas. Like, the gas mineability, or gas efficiency is atrocious. But yeah, that's a fuck. Oh, you imported these with PyGRP? Rest in peace. But anyway, my biggest complaint about the map was the heroes, not the layout. I thought the layout was an improvement from the previous maps. I was just giving you specific feedback in those areas because I felt like maybe there was an opportunity for... Like, obviously it's fresh in your mind because you just worked on it, and it's fresh in my mind because I just played it, so... Hopefully it was somewhat useful. Okay. That's an insane... I can't believe you would DM me such insanity. I'm wish Susan could censor Discord messages too. Do you have any updated... did you just post it in Maritime Strategy a while ago? The pullingweeds.scx. If you haven't updated it since then, I could just download it there. Otherwise, you can DM me. Those units are only bugged. You're probably talking about the Kadar or the... Yeah, I think they're the Callus or Uraj or whatever. I haven't looked at it since you actually gave it a name. But I can look at it right now before I get back to working on mine. Looks like there's a fair bit of open space for buildability, generally speaking. Looks like you decided to be Protoss instead of Terran. Interesting. And you combine this into a wider one, by the looks of things. For a ramp to be this wide and then only to lead to a choke this thin, I wonder if that's going to play out very well. My concern with that right now is the idea that you have, like, you could set up a nice, like, cannon area over here. If you were Terran, it would just be static defense, obviously, but either way, you can just put you could put some static defense over here. Obviously, that would be beneficial to the player. I guess it wouldn't be too terrible for attacking into, but I would still see about extending the ramp like one tile over, where you do something like this. And yeah, I would just do that personally. That way it's more in line with how wide that ramp is. It's still one tile less, but it's not a directly like parallel line or anything. Just to allow a little bit more. Also, maybe you might consider... You might consider extending this one over to the left. You'll need to like fill in that water cliff a little bit more and move those doodads down. But if you did extend this one to the left, then it offers a little bit more duality where it's like... You know, either you try to funnel your army down two separate bridges, or you can rotate around. Just to offer a little bit of a reason to go to a different route, or go with a different route. I would say the number of pebbles and rocks and shit that you have in here do feel a little excessive. Like, it feels like just noisy, I guess. Visual noise. This gas I don't love the placement of, mostly because workers... Well, this whole thing is like, if you got to kind of consider the fact that workers will block unit pathing, and there's not like an easy way to circumvent this area. Like, say the Zerg have taken this base, and while they can't build anything over here, maybe they place guard some lurkers or something, although I don't even think that works, but because of morphed units. But say they have like an army prepared over here or something, and you don't want to extend out into this territory because of the fact that it's held by your enemies. If that's the case, and you have access to this base, your workers are going to be stopping the rotations of troops if they need to get over here for some reason. Like, say you also took this base and you're trying to reinforce. Now, that can be done in an intentional way where you're saying, like, yes, you have to plan that around, like plan that out. But in this case, I feel like it would probably be better to move the gas up a little bit, or where this tree is, like put the gas over there and reorient the mineral fields or whatever. Whatever you feel like doing in that instance, if you feel like that's... You agree with what I'm saying in that sense about the troop rotations? Because as it stands, they would have to like really hug the bottom. A lot of them would get stuck in an A-move scenario. Other than that... Some tight chokes over here in the high ground, but nothing crazy. Could be alleviated a little bit by moving this rock doodad over here instead, or over here. For stuff like this, if you want to fit it in, you can right-click on the doodad and hit Convert to Terrain, and then you just go to the Copy, Cut, Paste brush, which is down here. You untick Units and Fog of War. And I guess Terrain in this case. Oh no, you want Terrain, never mind. It would be doodads. You just box select, copy, and paste, and you can actually put it anywhere, like including where normally because the doodad is 3 tiles tall, you can basically turn it into a 2 tile tall doodad. Just gotta remember that means the top tile is now buildable, but otherwise there's not really any difference. So you can do that if you want, and then you just delete the old stuff. Probably could put a bit more detail on the border cliffs, like over here, where there's not really any gameplay, and try to reduce some variation on the cliff side as well. But I figure that's like end stage polish. There's nothing really like layout wise or whatever functionally speaking. Maybe you could try to move the brown base a few tiles to the right so that you could facilitate a reverse ramp over here and then open this area up, and suddenly this area would actually have a utility or some purpose, especially if you flattened this expansion out a little bit against the bottom barrier, the bottom part of the map. What you would be able to do then is actually have troop rotations in here, all throughout here, and also allow for flanks. If you've killed the brown main and you want to kill this natural, assuming this is his natural, you have another avenue that you opened up by attacking the main, and then vice versa. If you have wiped out the natural and taken control over this area, you could do a flank from the rear, and now this player has to worry about that. That would be something that I would say you could basically work this bottom left corner into the map. You might even consider doing something like that over here. Maybe like a reverse ramp up here, and then this could be like a mineral-only expansion. I see you have a mineral-only down here, but maybe you could move that mineral-only up here and then make this a gas. Like, the thing I'm thinking is, like, you probably want this to be a gassed expansion, as in mineral and gas, because of the fact that it's in closer proximity to the Zerg, and it's actually harder to defend. I mean, I guess just because of the distance, it's not necessarily harder to defend, but it is... I guess it is defensible. But my concern would be, like, if given a choice between this base and either of these two, I'm always going to pick these first two on the top left before I pick that, just because of the location, and also because of the fact that I'd be getting less overall resources. So if you wanted to move this over here to be a super safe expansion to take, that could also work in this little bit. Though it seems like you may be trying to give the impression that this map is mostly like an island or something with the water surrounding it. So, I mean, that's my first pass. Obviously, I haven't like played it. I haven't hopped in and tried to mess around with it, but just looking at it in the editor, that would be my initial commentary on it. Hopefully it was helpful. Right, yeah. I mean, the other thing you can try to do... I feel like... I wish there was some way to have, like, a plug-and-play, drag-and-drop AI. But basically what I would like to have is some sort of thing that would help you stress test a map by, like... If you just drop in an AI that doesn't have any base layouts or anything like that, doesn't have anything that's map-specific... associated with it, it's just an AI that we've tested and we know performs well when given the tools to do so. I feel like something like that could be useful for designers, like level designers, because then they would say like, well, this AI is known to be, you know, very competitive and it's too strong in this map, which means I probably gave it too many tools, and I can use that as like a tool for you know, figuring out basically like, are there too many resources on this map or something like that. And then vice versa, it could be something that you would use to also see if you gave too few tools, too few resources, or too few build space or whatever, because you would very clearly see that in the AI's performance. So maybe I'll investigate whether or not that's even a feasible strategy. The problem, like, as nice as it sounds, basically like using AI to automate the testing of a map in some fashion, so at least you see like all the edge cases and shit that you have to fix, and maybe you can see that a little bit easier. At the same time, I think a good portion of the development of any map is developing whether, like, basically trying to design the that map's AI, trying to figure out what you're going to do, like what the AI, what specific AI personalities are going to do with the tools that they have on the map in question. So it may just end up being kind of redundant. Might be good for map crap, though. Now, of course, the other thing that I have to do here, right, is I have to try to, oops. Here it is. I have to go in and try to use the latest Hydras and see what I can come up with. Right, yeah. I mean, that's basically what I do as well. Oops. That's sort of what I was talking about when I was looking at this southern central base over here. It's like, probably needs a gas and needs a bit more build space. I've been thinking about that in general. I think more build space would be useful. And I also think I really want to use the add build command that iQuare put together, and I want to use a lot of those like add build loops and stuff. I really want to get, you know, plug those in, because I want to see the AI actually using the areas that I've designed and, like, based on their money, slapping down, like, you know, a bunch of factories. It's gonna be really cool when we get that done. One sec, I have to plug in my other light, though. bulb on this one needs to be changed or something. It was going off. It was flickering earlier. So I unplugged it. But I have this one that I brought from my last place that I was living in. It is incredibly bright. I don't know if it made any difference in the brightness that is apparent in the room. It looks like it did. Perfect. Mostly just for me, but... helps the camera too, it looks like. Alright, so... another thing that has to be reworked here, though, is the fact that we start the AI out with a fair bit of stuff, right? Like, we start at least this player 7 out here. Now, the idea behind starting the player out with so much stuff was that it made sense to do that because of the fact that we had Zaz, and Zaz was kind of like a cushion and also was attacked first. But with this new system that we have set up here, the Protoss are probably going to bum rush this AI through this little ramp over here. Now, I'm fine with that. I think that's fair. And then after that, they can focus on hitting Cordovan. But hitting Redwood first makes sense. Then Cordovan after. Would be the next Zerg target, anyway. So it's probably going to go something like Redwood, Sienna, Cordovan, and then random. So the first 3 attacks will be predetermined. Scarlet can attack Redwood, then Cordovan, and then I guess random. Maybe it would be Redwood, Cordovan, and then random between the Zerg, and then completely random. And then Sienna can focus on, you know, the Cordovan push where they focus on smashing the... they get that siege tank timing, basically, the siege mode timing. So we can do that for their first attack, and then after that they can hit Ultramarine and then probably descend into more randomness. But the idea that it's like a 2v2v1, I think for one that makes the map a bit scarier. You don't have as much of a sort of, what's the term? Like, there's not quite as much of a cushion, especially with regards to the Protoss. But because we're doing it that way, it only makes sense to start the AI out with a little bit less when it comes to their initial forces. So I think in this case, we probably want to remove the NG Bay and the Armory for the Terran players. We removed the Forge and the Photon Cannon for their Ultramarine. And then maybe cut out, you know... Let's take a look at the supplies here. So we have about the same in terms of supplies. They just have one more because they have an SCV over there. Oh wait, no, they have one more because they have another Marine over here too that I didn't see. Wait, am I missing something? Oh yeah, there is another Marine over here. That's fine. I couldn't even see that guy. So that makes sense, I think. And again, we can kind of snuggle these minerals up against. Up over here. Forgot about that. Of course, this means I have to, once again, suffer the repercussions of changing up all of the res areas. Very unfortunate. Alright, nice. So I'll have to change up the base layouts for this base, of course. I'll also have to make it so that Redwood takes this base first and then goes for that one and then that one, so I kind of stretch up the side of the map. That shouldn't be too difficult to do. Alright. Nice. So we are still missing one base area because of the fact that we removed Zaz's base. I don't think that we need to compensate by adding another one, though. In fact, I don't think we did add another one when we revised the map like in the last month. Was that in January or February or something? I don't remember when we last looked at this map. I think, well, no, it was after Stormborn, so it was like earlier than that. It was like December, late November or something. But when we did revise the map most recently, I don't think we added any base areas. We just added minerals to this and made it a full base instead of a gas only. And we also expanded the map a bit and found some more. Like, that was when we rewrote or revised the AI somewhat recently. Cool. I feel pretty good about those changes so far. bit more build space as well. And I think we'll be all right. Now, a problem with the idea for add build for Protoss, making it so that they also add build the appropriate pylons is going to be somewhat difficult. Maybe I would have to separate those into their own towns, like sub-towns, basically. Like create script a new town at some area, but I'm not sure. I guess I could attach it to the main res area of the, like whatever that town was part of, so that the workers would go back and mine over in that area while they wait for more requests or something, because workers get assigned to towns, so I don't know what that would do, how that would work out. But suppose we'll see. Now, one of the concerns I do have about Hydra and Stormborn, now, I would like to get their updates done, and I've already committed to the idea of doing, I mean, obviously I was supposed to do those before the end of February, but I basically focused entirely on my full toilet submission. So now that that's done with, until I finish with this map and with Stormborn, or after I do those two things, really the next thing on the list was in Consummate. But the problem is, Hydra may not be operational until after iQuare merges the latest changes from Nave and then finishes all of the other things that he started with his full toilet submission, by, you know, implementing it in such a way that we see some changes in what tech is currently implemented versus what tech is eventually going to be. Like Stormborn, for example, does actually have Dark Templar, and it would make sense to give them Dark Archons as well. So should we wait until Dark Templar and Dark Archons are finished before we revise Stormborn? I don't even know if the mod is going to work, or the plugin is going to work without crashing anyway, because of all of the weird issues that we've seen. And I do need to use the latest version because that's what has stuff like add build in it. So I don't know if it's possible to make updates and ship them in a short-term environment where I'm expecting to finish with Hydra's first Zerg mission updates by the end of this week, and then by the end of next week finish with Stormborn's update, and then, you know, move on to working on Inconsummate. I may have to just skip straight to working on Inconsummate at this point if it's going to be a while before iQuare has time to work on that stuff. So I know the AI was really, really broken when I was messing around with it most recently. If you cast your mind back. To those years. Cool. Thanks, Alexander. Good luck with your map. Yeah, I myself am rather excited for it. I'm pretty sure that it'll be quite the experience. Yeah, I mean, I'm just glad people have found it, you know, exciting in that way. Oh, the one where I'm manually having to paint that shit over? That's just because when I expanded the map, I did so at one tile at the north and one tile at the south, so it was a net total of 2 tiles. But apparently that's... like, basically each isometric diamond is 2 tiles or 4 tiles or something. So if you do it by 1 instead on either end instead of 2 on either end, it will break everything. So, but I had to do it that way. Like if I did 2 tiles on either end, it wouldn't have been enough to have, like, basically the whole thing is that this top strip was too thin and this bottom strip was too thin, and so I needed 1 tile on either end to make it acceptable, or at least better than what it was. What do you mean shift it? Well, if you copy and paste it like this, it will just create a bunch of tiles that will do the same thing. So if you're talking about expanding the map more, I can't do that. Because right now it's divisible by 32. And if I do it, if I continue to fuck with it, like if I make it more, I think if I increase the height more, it'll fuck with the minimap rendering. Not that it'll be bad or it'll be like a crash or anything. It's just the issue with it is the minimap won't render at an appropriate size. Until we crack that code, we are in a rather annoying position. Nope. Because even if it would quote unquote correct it, it would still do so by rendering all of the old tiles. I mean, for one, I think all the old tiles are already fucked, but it would do so by fucking all of the old tiles anyway. It's all hard code, and none of it's documented. I don't know exactly how SI put it together originally, but I asked him for some breakdown of it a while ago, and he said that he doesn't really fully understand it. I think he actually said that nobody understands it, but that was before the remaster. Presumably, since then he can ask, like now he can ask about it if he wants to, but who knows? What's up, Remy? I'll show you a myth. More like a Biff. Well, iQuare wants to crack it anyway so that he can enable new isometric tiles in his editor, MapQuare. Your birthday? Holy shit. I forgot about that. You're right. 3 of the 3 is your birthday. Cold N. What are you doing for your birthday? Or what did you do, I should say? some happy birthday Necron images. What does that even mean? That was Necron's Gone Wild, where he starts taking his clothes off and rubbing himself with his snail. Dude, don't even talk to me about 2033. Dude, imagine if I'm still streaming Hydra development in 2033. I would make that the release date. Could you imagine? That's 13 years from now. It was you, actually. I hope he sent you the dog girl. Yeah, 2033. Another reason to never say that number. Surely you deserve better than that. And we all know that you get what you fucking deserve. I'm on the hunt for 9. Of course, I say 9 as I see 11. Oh, that's already correct. Probably the dying part, if I had to guess. Wow, for removing an entire base and then moving like a bunch of other resources around, that made surprisingly little difference. To the res area numbers, it seems. $14. Isn't that over here somewhere? $16's down here. Wow, there is actually no difference. And yeah, I guess 19 no longer exists. Yeah, I wish so too, man. Holy shit. I think Iquare was coming up with some way to get around that recently. He hasn't implemented anything yet, but he was sending me documentation about one of the things that he was going to do. Yeah, he was going to have a subcommand for script that's called rearrange res area, where %1 is an area of the map that contains the resources. And percent, yeah. So like one of the I forget what the term is. One of the arguments is the area to check, and then you could also use a res area ID for that if you wanted to. But obviously the whole point is to not have to count on that. And then another one, basically using the AI script to set the res areas up. So you'd probably do that in your triggers AI. The same one that you use for unit names and stuff. You'd do that there and immediately just set it up that way. So even though it's really asinine to have to do, at least when you do it, you're done. And anything you add after that point can be really easy. It's like if you decide to add a resource area or you decide to move one around, all you have to do is just change, like move the location that corresponds to it over, or in the case of adding a new one, just create a new location and feed that information to the script. Like, it would be much simpler, even though it's still not ideal. It's still better than doing this. So I definitely think that would be useful. And also he mentioned that sometimes you deal with issues like the reason why you have to use like why I have to put this start location for the starting player up here is because it'll start to steal the minerals from this base. So like this would allow you to negate that issue, basically. It doesn't really work fine, though, because you have to be able to actually call the create script in that sense. Like, you need to detect where you are in order to provide base layouts appropriately. So I don't know how you would determine that exactly. Like, I guess you could do, like, bring jump to a certain location instead of having to rely on res area for base layouts. So I guess it could work in theory. I don't know what your workaround was for that. Oh yeah, that's right, because bring jump it doesn't discriminate in that sense. Yeah, I don't know, man. That's pretty insane. Yeah, I mean, even though that would solve most of the edge cases, we would still need some way to make it so that res areas were assigning correctly, because you still have to do so much stupid stuff by moving your start locations in a specific way. It's still not great, so I don't know what's up with that, but Yeah, I mean, in terms of, well, I guess what it would end up being is like if you go to I do this in every one of my scripts where I check for what the linked res area is. So in this case, I would just, instead of res area jump, it would be town bring jump, or whatever the new command would be called. That would scan. I mean, really, all we would need is a custom script version of bring jump that would allow us to optionally, pick in or add in a town field, a town parameter. And so in this case, I would just use that comparison and jump to a different block. But I mean, we really shouldn't make it a script command, because then we would have to do the because the custom script commands can't jump to blocks without you first declaring what they are. Which is so asinine. So we can't even do that, really. But I wonder if I should even salvage any of this. I don't even know if there's anything in here that would be useful. I don't think so. I'll probably have to rewrite the whole thing for all of the AIs looking at this. Well, you wouldn't even need to specify town. It would just be like bring area or something, or script bring. But the problem with using a script command, like in the script command, you can't specify a block like where it says CO train or CO scale. You would have to write in set pause variable CO scale new, or whatever, and then call that. So it's an extra line for every single thing you're jumping to, basically. You couldn't put it here anyway. You would have to put it all the way at top to declare it, because the script system runs outside of the AI script system, so it can't see the block names. I mean, yeah, that's basically it. Like, it doesn't see block names or function names, so you have to declare them as variables. You'd have to ask iQuery. I assume it's something to circumvent the need for a set number of parameters, but maybe it's some other technical limitation. The bottom line is that working within this system, we're basically just trying to find, even though iQuery seems like what he's trying to do a lot of the time it seems like what he wants to do is create some sort of long-lasting system that will allow people to comfortably work with AI and Brood War for a long time. But I think that's an unrealistic goal, given what I know about the engine and all that. So I don't know what's really going to happen with that, but yeah, basically it wouldn't have to be a script command if you wanted to make it so that it mandated a town ID associated with it, which you could then use 255 for to just make it use the current town. That would be fine. And it would still solve the problem of what we're talking about. And then we wouldn't need to set pause var every single time. So I would suggest that as a change for that. Is there anything else that you've observed? It might be, yeah. If you can come up with some system that would be better, or you can come up with some ideas to run by iQuery, for sure, just DM him about it, or pick him in Newbor or something. Newbor might be better. Maybe somebody else will also have an idea. But what I was going to say earlier is, I don't know what you think about the whole thing, but for me, it's like, I don't. There's a large number of things that I would like to have, a wish list that I would really enjoy having, when it comes to this sort of thing that I don't know if it's like feasible. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's really possible to implement. So I'm just hoping that what I need is feasible. I'm not 100% convinced of that, so. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, start posting this shit in Newbor and let him know. Like, if you've got some ideas for that. Because then we can actually use the system. You can make the icon for that button a U with a check mark or something. I don't know what significance that would have, but I think it would be good. All right, so before I jump into the AI changes and start to test some stuff out, I do have to use the bathroom. So, I will BRB. Alright, I'm back. And you guys had no music the whole time. Bye. Alexander posted this one in Artism a while ago. Turn the volume down a little bit. Just wondering what was going on there. I'm going to go ahead and pass on that one. Love it when the servers just don't even... Wait. What? Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Okay. All right. So that's done. All right, now that I've messed around with that, I think we'll be in fairly good shape to work on the AI. So that's my next goal. Let's start with the Zerg here. We'll use the full toilet Zerg as a reference. Toilet Zerg. Now we're talking. Oh, I see. That was for the trigger stuff. We'll run that later. In some other environment. I was also thinking I should probably open up some of the area over here with regards to the... like, what is actually available for build space and all that. Is that really enough? Not sure. I'm gonna try it. Oh yeah, that's another fun thing I get to do. I get to not worry about placing guards. Pretty epic. So, what am I doing anyway? I'll just take this map that I have right now and use that for the layouts. Question is, am I done fucking around with stuff? I think so. I had some okay Parasite idle orders configured a while ago for the first Terran mission, I think, from... I don't actually know who it was from, but... This was an orange. I don't remember if Parasite stops shield regeneration. Could be interesting if it does, but I think it's just repairing or healing. Now, what does he take again? I know he's 1, 12, 16. So those are identical. fuck? So I highly doubt this AI will ever get to the point where it's actually having 13 hatcheries in its main, but I wanted to leave the opportunity there. I guess I'll have to make sure that that's even feasible, though. So let's do get our base layouts in order. Oops. Ah, welcome back. Do you guys remember all the way back when I was doing Stormborn development and I had all of the Zerg players were overbuilding on production? With this new system, they will actually use that production. Pretty fucking exciting. I posted whatever the most recent changes were to the new game state document into the Hydra channel. Wound up making some pretty significant... well, I don't know about significant. We made some changes to the overall game anyway. Hell yeah. Yeah. It should be... I mean, again, assuming I can... you probably missed the whole spiel I had earlier about whether or not it would work out at all, but the idea is to The idea is to get the... just see if it can work out at all. And if it can, great. Because we need a lot more tech at our disposal. I think. Hard to say for sure. Yeah. So you already know then. Yeah, I mean, the main concern I have is if we don't get... Like, the other thing is that there were a lot of wild deficiencies and crashes and stuff that were happening in Stormborn when I was most recently working on that. And that's one of those things that I just... If I'm starting to deal with those again, I'm probably just going to... like, fuck right off at that point. But we'll see what happens. Yeah, the upper limit of spending requests. So the way that that worked was basically... I'm trying to think of like the best way I can describe this. The AI could only receive so many requests, and if they went over a certain number of requests active at one time, they would basically glitch out and they would freeze. In essence, they wouldn't do much. They would need to be like attacked or some other really like obvious thing, like something to supersede whatever they were getting looped on. They're stuck in some loop, never progressing. So that was a problem, obviously, and we needed to try and figure out what was, like, what the problem, or how to solve that sort of thing. And that's one of those things that obviously, like, at the time we had no idea. We had no real leads. So there's also another thing that crashes if one single town requests 100 things. So iQuare developed a command called add build that instead of like basically in the default system, if you request 2 creep colonies and then you request 3 creep colonies, that's 2 separate requests, even though it's just incrementing the number. So this command add build just increments the number and does not increase the number of requests. It just so basically it's a way to circumvent the 100 cap so that we don't crash the game. But the AI performance thing was simultaneous requests. So now the way around that seems to be having enough waits in between each set of requests that get added so that the AI can basically take enough time to satisfy those requests and spend their money and do their shit. That's more of like a script flow thing, though. That's like, if you can do it, well enough or whatever. So that's more of a coding technique thing to get through that. Oh yeah, Veek. Every single mission is getting remade from scratch, and same for the scripts. Like, I'll use the old stuff as a reference in some way, but I think I showed the first mission on stream a while ago. The new first mission. It was like from last year. But obviously I'll fire that up later on and take a look around the map. It's dated now, which is crazy because it was way better, obviously, than what we had before. But now, by comparison to my current work, it's dated. It was a while ago. It was just in the middle of some random mod stream. It wasn't like I was working on it. It was just, you know, I was looking at it and trying to figure out like some stuff. But yeah, that's who knows when that's gonna be making an appearance. I can fire it up real quick now, I guess. Oh, it's in here. Yeah, I think this is it. It has all of the placeholders still in the map, basically. Oh, I actually had started to work on this and expand the map out to the right a while ago, which is why, like, there's a huge lack of detail the further to the right you go. I may just end up resuming this, like restarting this from scratch, though. I don't know. As you can see, I'm still using the old dead assets as placeholders. So, in the original, even further back version of this, I don't even know if... Is there a version of this that, yeah, this is just... I don't know if I didn't save the old versions, it doesn't look like. Anyway, in one of the original versions, like the older previous version... this area that's now an island expansion was the starting location, and Goska, like basically this was all connected to itself, and Goska rescues the raiders that crash land here in the opening cutscene. He like throws a grenade. He throws his stun grenade at them while cloaked, and so you actually witness his abilities instead of just being what's the term, like reading up on them or something. So you actually see him use the ability. Well, you see a cloaked ghost throw a grenade. And so then he decloaks after the battle, and there's some dialogue, and then you, like, before that you could even, I don't know if I still have that version of the script, but before you even do much, no, I had already edited this. It looks like, yeah, this is already that already got removed. But basically, there was some dialogue and like 2 lines of dialogue after the initial attack, initial cutscene, and then you gained control because the Zerg were about to move in with another wave. But it felt too much like a set piece. Like it was way too set piecey to me. And on top of it, I really didn't like that there was still a micro thing. So then I had 2 ways that I could do it. I could either split the first map, like the micro section with Goska, into its own map and have it be a macro section, and then have Act of Gods be the second map and have that be like where the start of that map would be where Goska's forces get absolutely destroyed in a cutscene or something, similar to what happened in the original. But then I decided that removes any relevance, like because it's in another map now. It's not like you fought really hard to keep all of those raiders alive and then you see them torn away. Like, the feeling of you losing the raiders in that context is the whole point of the thing. Is like, you try to keep them alive in the microsection and then they die anyway. Like, you're supposed to feel pissed off just like Goska feels pissed off. Like, you're supposed to relate to him there. Whereas, it was obvious, it didn't make any sense to then go into another map. Like, there would be too much disconnect between you saving the raiders, them going off into a new map, and then them dying. As opposed to them immediately dying after you've quote-unquote saved them, or whatever. So, I didn't like that idea either as a solution. I went through a huge fuck ton of iterations, but basically I landed on the idea that I would instead have I would remove any connection the player would have to those units. I would have a few dialogue lines. I would have Goska just get very visibly angry with Stralium about the whole situation, about how the raiders die, and like Stralium, I mean Goska can't just come out and say, why the fuck did you kill them, or whatever. He can't belie his true intentions too much. But the point would be like, well, it doesn't even matter if he belies his true intentions because of the fact that Starlium doesn't give a fuck, obviously, and it's not really very helpful. But the point would be like there would be some room for him to like be emotive, and the player could then gauge based on that, like, okay, this is how Goska feels. You know what I mean? So then that would be like the opening cutscene, and beyond that, there's the idea of him actually being on the map, providing you some scouting information. The Protoss arrive late, after the Raiders have already started to scramble and respond to you. And that's sort of the mission flow, is the Protoss do arrive at a fixed time. And Goska's like scouting out the Raiders and giving you some information. So local mapmaker pranks players. Listen, you're a prank. Yeah, so one of the things that I wanted to have as a subtle element of the infestation anyway was the idea that it doesn't really make sense from a tactical perspective. Like, what is the strategic advantage in having Goska lead Zerg as opposed to a Cerebrit? Well, Cerebrits can't be everywhere. They're not super... Like, there's not a huge number of them. So it makes sense for there to be some sort of caste system where something between a Cerebrit and an Overlord, or I think in the manual they talk about Queens leading Zerg as well or something, but fuck that. Like, that's just dumb. The point is that commands are supposed to be relayed through Overlords, and the Overlord, the chain of command is like Overmind, Cerebrit, Overlord, but the Overmind created Cerebrits for this express purpose of compartmentalizing his will, or their will, I guess. The Overmind shouldn't really be gendered, but you get the idea from that idea. Anyways, it's like it's meant to compartmentalize it so the Overmind doesn't have to manually micromanage everything, because that would be too demanding for any entity, any consciousness. So because it's too demanding for any consciousness to control literally the entire swarm at once, the Overmind creates this hierarchy, this chain of command, where you have Overmind, Cerebrits, Overlords. And at some point, the Cerebrits themselves grew too overwhelmed by the sheer number of swarms that, like, this is something that I play upon in general with the addition of Kag as a new character. Kag's brood is so huge and unwieldy that it literally just tramples over itself and other Zerg that are in the field. And so the point is, the Overmind recognizes, and as well as like Tuzor specifically recognizes, that there's room for an additional element in the chain of command to fill in this gap where smaller squads of like factions, or not really factions, but small teams that belong to the same brood can be led by a lieutenant of some sort, and that can be helpful. And so the experimentation begins with Starlium, and Starlium is like rushed in a sense. The experimentation is rushed because of the Ire is located in a very impromptu manner in the Zerg campaign, and so they have to attack Ire like almost immediately because the Overmind for some reason decides that that's supposed to be a reasonable decision to rashly immediately invade. And so the justification for having lieutenants is that they need to be able to command armies, and they need to be able to do so to offload some of the immense pressure and immense workload and overhead of leading an entire brood that Cerebrits have. Now, Kag doesn't give a fuck about that. He has no interest in having lieutenants, but Tuzor obviously does. The Overmind takes interest in Tuzor's project with regards to this, and eventually I'll get into more of that. That's like story spoilers and stuff eventually. That'll be obvious when you play the campaign. But Goska fits into this because of the fact that Tuzor thought Terrans may also be useful, but in order to actually serve this purpose, and this is the answer to your question in a very roundabout way, finally we're getting to it, in order to fulfill the purpose of leading an army, they needed to retain some element of that free will. They needed to retain the consciousness necessary to, like, if there's any issues with them fulfilling their orders. If there's a failure, they know that their life is on the line, that they could just be terminated. They don't really have a say in it, but they have tactical authority, even though they don't have like authority over themselves. So they have the free will of being able to go about whatever their operation is in whatever way they see fit, whatever way they think is appropriate. And that's basically where that comes in. Well, in theory, yes, if Kag had something like that, his swarm would be really strong. But Kag's counter-argument is that his swarm is always brutally efficient, and just because there's a large number of allied casualties, it doesn't really mean anything. So basically what ends up happening is Kag is almost always deployed when all other Zerg swarms have been broken, or other coordinated offensives have been, met and matched and driven back. And so the idea is that any stragglers that are down there are expendable anyway. Just send this thing in. It's the Zerg equivalent of like a fucking tactical nuclear strike. There's not going to be anything, friendly or otherwise, that's going to be alive down there after Kag is done. And that's sort of the idea. Like, that's the fantasy of his faction, the power fantasy of Kag's brood, is this thing will just wipe out entire worlds based on the fact that it is that efficient. And yet there's some inefficiencies with it, like sort of attacking itself in some ways, and the fact that it is so unwieldy. But any extra consciousness meddling with the plans and the overarching directive of just killing everything would reduce the efficacy of the overall army. Now, whether or not that's true is like that's part of the conflict between Kag and the other Cerebrits that you see in this campaign, is that plays out in a different way, where Kag develops this method to help keep its brood in check, but it's not the same thing as having lieutenants. It's like a relay node, basically. Like, think of like if an overlord was evolved a little bit more or something, it stabilizes his network, his command structure, something like that. And that's just to keep his brood in check, so that it doesn't attack allies as much, or themselves as much. But yeah, that's like the thing is, the reason why Goska has the free will that he has, like, it is kind of reverse engineered. Ultimately, the reason why he has the free will that he has is because that's how he needs to have agency in order for the story to be interesting, and in order for his character to have meaning and his arc to be relatable in any capacity. But the in-universe justification for it makes sense and checks out, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I don't see any problems with that method. The justification that the Zerg need some way to rein in their growing numbers, or they'll all end up looking like Kag's brood, and none of them really want that, beyond Kag. Like, Kag thinks that that's a great idea, probably. But that's sort of the idea, is like, Cerebrits are looking, well, at least Tuzor specifically, is noticing a trend of exponential growth when it comes to the swarm, and thinks that, in order to avoid the swarm becoming so unwieldy in terms of how large the numbers are, that it can no longer be used in a surgical and precise manner, could end up really biting the Zerg in the ass later on, and really serve as a deficiency for the Zerg in general. And because of this observation, Tuzor is... That's basically the motivation that Tuzor has initially, to explore this avenue and say, like, what if we end up making these Zerg-based lieutenants? Can we repurpose infested ghosts? Can we repurpose infested psionics from other races? So there's going to be some Protoss shit that it gets experimented upon, but that's, like, far in the future, probably, if I decide to go down that route. A lot of this stuff is still speculative as for how we explore this avenue, but the overarching theme of Inconsummate is control. That is the central theme when it comes to the story. Tuzor wants more precise control. Goska would love to have control. He doesn't have any control, really. Strontium, the whole reason you can even argue Strontium has a character arc in the first place is the fact that at some point it gains control, where it didn't have any before. The Overmind relinquishes control. With the addition of CAG, we have this interplay between a character that relishes in the fact that it doesn't have precise control. Almost, it's almost excited that it no longer holds dominion over its forces and just lets them off the leash. And you have all of these different personalities at play, all these different characters at play, and a lot of the relationships that are established here are based in some sort of power struggle, some sort of struggle for control. And so that's one of the things that I think this new version of the script, this new version of the story it'll have less shit that's rough around the edges. It'll have less like beat you over the head with the message lines. And you'll be able to take it seriously. You'll be able to look at it and really see what's going on. That's important to me. The idea that you can actually, I've talked about this a while ago, but I think Inconsummate has some really nice moments, but I think in order to really fully enjoy any moment, like epic moment in your project or in any given project, you have to, in order to give players license to fully revel in the nature of an epic moment and really appreciate it, players have to not have anything else to complain about, and that nothing can cheapen that moment, right? You have to design your script and your story and your characters such that it feels earned, right? And it's not just like, oh, if you just take this clip in a vacuum and look at that. Like the Overmind's death, for example, in the original Inconsummate. I think that's a really good moment. But it is cheapened by the fact that it does kind of come out of left field. And then what the result of it is, I think the monologue is a cool moment, but what's actually happening there is it's mostly like the fact that I synced up some custom music with the script, and the fact that it was also unexpected the first time around because you just watched the credits roll. Like that's why that's a moment, as opposed to the quality of what you're experiencing. Like the dialogue is not great, and a bunch of other stuff is not great about that. But the fact, like, just the presentation was on point, so it felt good on a visceral level. That's why that's a moment. So what I want is something that will not cheapen any moments, basically. Hey, what's up, Baileyful? Right, yeah, it kind of played with your expectations there for sure. When I did that and I saw the reactions that people had to that post-credits thing, was one of the things that went through my mind is, how am I gonna, like, what does this mean for the future? Like, am I going to have to one-up this at some point? And it's a good thing I didn't really get too far down that rabbit hole, but I was thinking, for example, there was going to be a post-credits scene, not post-credits gameplay, but a post-credits scene in the sequel to Inconsummate, which was originally just going to be 3 maps or 4 maps or something, a mini campaign, a small installment. And the idea behind this post-credits scene was to reveal one of the upcoming protagonists in the next installment. And I thought to myself, I was like, does it really need to be a post-credits scene? I don't know. Like, I feel like I don't know if that's necessary. Not that it was necessary the first time in Inconsummate either, but that was one of the thoughts that I've had. Oh yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like, you can have really, really played out ideas, boring cliche ideas that people have done 1,000 times, but if your execution is on point, I've said this so many times, it doesn't even, like, the ideas are not even worthwhile to consider as far as like a review bit, or like something to consider when trying to figure out if the story is good quality or something. Like, you don't even really consider the experience of, well, you consider the experience more than you consider the themes or the ideas, especially in custom content when, like, people are really amateurish about it, just like I was, like, but to a greater degree than what I was with Inconsummate. So, like, I had themes going on and I knew what I wanted to emphasize. So I had a little bit more of an idea than a lot of the other people. But, man. Man, oh man. Some of the themes in those... Some of the executions of these custom campaigns we played obviously leaves a lot to be desired. So yeah, the Overmind had a monologue post-mortem, which was meant to be like the last instructions it had sent out directly to the Magnate, to Stralium. That was the monologue. So you were getting it. It was almost like, obviously I didn't explicitly state that there was a time jump, but it's meant to imply that this could have been back from before, like prior to that mission, prior to the Goska evacuation bit. But that's a situation where that map was trying to serve so many different purposes and wound up, especially after how open-ended and admittedly like gimmicky and cheap the 5th mission was to free the beast. Reap So is one of those maps that's like, it almost feels like you're going back in time to the Flame Knives era in a way, because like half of the map is inaccessible to you and you're funneled down very specific pathways and you can't lift off, because if you lift off you might fly over to the top left area of the map and desync some shit. And it's like very obvious I was struggling with how to figure that out, you know what I mean? So I am very happy to be able to have some confidence in what I'm going to do for the new version. In the new version, you're just going to have like a two different phases of the game. The first phase being the Terran stuff, if I decide to go for it. Like the current plan is to have the first phase be Terran, and then the second phase be Zerg, and the second phase will, adapt to the game state of the first phase. So if you leave a lot of Zerg bases alive, then those will still be alive when the second phase starts, or something like that. You know what I mean? So, like, that'll be much more reasonable. Then the whole map can be exploited in both phases, in some sense. I think another interesting element of that, though, is the idea that the AI will be able to be using the time of whatever that cutscene in between phase 1 and phase 2. In theory, the AI could be using that time to rebuild or expand, and minerals would be regenerating and stuff like that. So it's actually interesting that the passage of time in a cutscene has direct impact on like what ends up happening when you play the when you achieve the next phase, because it's not like I can pause mineral regeneration. I mean, I guess I could. In theory, I could pause AI script execution and mineral regeneration with some psychotic plugin that some C++ code that reads a certain death and checks that death every single time it's regenerating minerals. And if it's set to 1, then don't. But what the fuck, man? Seems like an over-engineered idea anyway. Though unfortunately, literally everything in Starcraft modding is over-engineered. Alright, so let's go into here. Well, it's like in the function that regenerates minerals, the first thing would have to be a check for the deaths. Well, tons of things happen every frame, so thankfully I'm not worried about performance. I think it's something like some hundreds of thousands of calculations are made each frame or something like that with these plugins, which would be a concern for performance if we weren't running on this kind of hardware. Oh, okay. Well, see you later. Thanks for hanging out. So, Bailiff, you said you were feeling better now. Were you? I might have missed a message from you earlier in the Mapcraft playthroughs. Did you go to take a nap because you were feeling sick or something? Ah, nice. Let's see. Sorry to hear that. Oh yeah, I do vaguely recall somebody... Iquare said you had the coronavirus or something. I was like, But I thought he was talking... He said that as plague started spreading to all of my air units in his map, so... I thought he was talking about metastasis. You know what's really weird is you pronounce the verb metastasize, but I'm pretty sure you pronounce the name or the noun metastasis as opposed to metastasis. Maybe it is metastasis. I don't know. That seems really odd though. It sure is. I really wish we had access to inline comments, but unfortunately... we don't. Yeah, no kidding. I think inline comments would work fine if you just... The reason why they don't work is not... Like, it's really dumb. It's just a Pi AI limitation as far as I can understand. As far as I know, like, that's the reason, so... Right. You just, like, detect when there's a comment, and if it's in the same line as other text that comes before the pound sign, you just filter out all text. Well, I guess you would just do that anyway. You would filter out all text, or delete all text, starting at the pound sign, ending before the line break. Right? I'm sure it's possible to do that. I mean, Pi already does that to all lines that are just pure comments. So why they can't do that for inline things is beyond me. Here, you wanna take the file and see if you can fix it? Actually, let me see. Maybe I can find where it does comments. It's in Python. I don't know anything about Python. Define comment range. If item sub. What? I'll ask Veek about this later on. I guess maybe he can get it to work. It looks like, yeah, self-ind. It looks like it's selecting or logging at the very least everything from the line start to the line end, but I don't know what it's doing to this operation. Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. Don't worry. I also have no idea what's happening. Oh yeah, we are working on Hydra finally. I reworked some of the first Zerg missions layout. I removed Zaz completely, made this more of like an open build space area. Hopefully it'll make the map feel a little bit less crowded. I added a gas to the Protoss player's third and opened up some more build space so that they can defend it a bit easier. Since it's a pretty risky expansion, I don't mind adding gas. I also opened up a bit more build space in the first player's main, but otherwise, I think that was it for layout changes. The fuck? We have to use Slack for my work, and it's such a shitty fucking app. Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, since now it's a 2v2v1 instead of a 3v2v1, I've put all of the other AI a little bit further back. So I removed the engineering bay for Scarlet, I removed the armory for Sienna, and I removed the forge for Ultramarine, so that all players start out on relatively even footing, right? Because the Zergs start out with a spawning pool, the Terrans start out with a barracks, and the Protoss start out with a gateway. So you all have your equivalents, basically. And since the Zerg are tightly packed together, even a little bit more so than the Terrans, it should be easy enough for them to help each other out in the early game for defense. But with this, putting it a little bit further back, I may even also reduce it so that all players start out with 4 workers instead of 6. But I don't think that'll be necessary in this case. It's just a thought that I had. One of the things that I'm going to try to do with this, though, is I really want to make ample usage of the add build command that iQuer made, which is what I used for the last AI in my full toilet submission, where basically it reads how many resources the AI has, and if it has, like, if it's floating 1,000 minerals, then it'll build a new hatchery or a new factory or a new set of gateways or something. Whereas even though that's like an expensive, like, obviously it's way more than the cost of the building, the point is so that it doesn't immediately gobble up all of its money on production. And it will recheck that every probably like 20 to 30 seconds. So if it continues to float that money, even with the new production structure made or in progress, it'll just add another one. And so there'll obviously be some sort of cap. But the idea of setting up a bunch of base layouts for extra production structures up into a certain cap is fine for me. So, for example, there's 13 possible hatcheries for the first Zerg player here. That'll probably continue to be something that happens, is like just like really crazy double-digit number of production structures. So Scarlet will have like 10 barracks and maybe 8 or 9 starports or something crazy to really throw a bunch of wraiths at you. Sienna will have maybe like upwards of 10 barracks and then upwards of 20 factories or something. Obviously, Ultramarine will have either like 6 robos or 8 stargates, depending on their opening, whether they're going carrier or reaver. And then for gateways, they'll probably have like 15, 20, something crazy like that. So you'll see really high numbers if you allow them to scale up to that level of floating money. And there being more gas on the map, by virtue of taking this gas over here, will make the Protoss pretty deadly, despite the fact that they are the one in this 2v2v1. And so I just think it's going to be a lot of... there's going to be a lot of... like, by virtue of the AI actually making use of the resources that it's piling up, it'll make resource starvation like a real objective for you, because you want to contain the AI so that they don't do that crazy shit and get a bunch of extra production structures and stuff. So I think there's a lot to use that with, to work with there. And yeah, the fact that the AI starts off with a little bit less stuff The incentive was mostly the fact that Ultramarine starts out with so much because of the fact that they were meant to contest Zaz in the early game, who also started out with more than the players did. But since Zaz is no longer here, that's no longer something that I need to do, so I had to rebalance the starting forces for Ultramarine, and then it made sense to rebalance the starting forces for the Terrans as well, because since Ultramarine will attack one of the players now, I can't also have them be expected to hold up against an unscouted Terran attack, should it happen. So even if they did scout, they would have to play super defensively if I didn't curtail all of the AI enemies. So in this case, like I was discussing earlier, I think the early attacks will go something like the Protoss will attack Redwood, then Sienna, and then Cordovan. And then after that, Cordovan being the first player down here that I've got all the base layouts for, and Redwood being the secondary player down here in the bottom left, or middle left. And after that, they'll just defer to whatever their biases are, mostly towards either the Zerg generically, probably Cordovan generically, or Sienna. So like one of those two is most likely going to be the ones that they pick. Until if Sienna's dead, then they'll go for Scarlet. And if Cordovan's dead, they'll go for Redwood, basically. And then pretty much the same idea, anyway, for the other Terran. Like the Scarlet is going to go Redwood, Cordovan, and then generically pick either Zerg or Protoss. And Sienna's going to go Cordovan, Ultramarine, and then generically pick either Cordovan or Ultramarine. So it should be pretty competitive, though. Especially if I end up making it so that Sienna not only is able to make good on the fast factory, like 2 or 3 siege tanks and a siege tech finishing in the middle of the push, that first attack from Sienna should catch a lot of bad players off guard, especially if they don't scout it out, right? That'll kill a lot of people, I think, in the early stages of this. Well, I don't know about a lot of people, but I think the idea is, like, I've been watching a lot of Twitch streamers who are playing the campaign for, like, the first time in a while, or for the first time at all, and they max have, like, 90 APM probably, so it's funny to me when I look at that and I'm like, because they would probably be interested in trying something like this, but they would get their ass absolutely destroyed immediately. So we'll see what happens. I know, right? You'd be able to look at their replays or videos or whatever and be like, noobs. Oh shit, 3. Dude, don't say 3 to me. You madmen. Remember when spore crawlers no longer required an evolution chamber in Starcraft 2, and the only reason was so that Terrans would stop Banshee cheesing? I remember. How embarrassing. Yeah. They should have been, based on their stats. Not 3. Anything but 3. I wonder if it makes more sense to separate this out into a separate town. My concern is I wanted this to be the add build stuff, but I don't actually know how that's going to work out. I guess this could also be its own town up here. And I guess I could create the scripts max workers 0 and wait until the resources exceeded a certain amount and then start add building. I don't know how that would work out. Could be one way to do it. Yeah, I think I'll think a bit more on that. That does seem like it would be a better situation, but for now I'll just slap the new expansion logic in. Oh, hi. Check out my locations. 450. Okay. Ah, I see. I already was doing that. So I guess those coordinates are still fine as well. Just gonna... pop all this stuff in. All right, well that's in. Oh yeah, you were talking about your game. What are you doing there? Birthday projects are always fun, in my opinion. Although I usually put way too much time into them. Oh, nice. If you need voice acting, hit me up. A lot of these might be the same exact coordinates. You people need you, actually. Yeah, it's a pretty good idea. Platformers are super easy to understand. And even if people don't know that much about video games, they've probably seen a platformer, and they've probably honestly played a platformer. Like when Temple Run was a big hit. I still can't believe all of those mobile games. They probably still do this, but the mobile games that like stop you from playing if you don't pay. It's like, yeah, you can't play this game. You didn't pay us enough money. That's like every mobile game that I'm aware of. Yeah, buy Living Whole Energy, dude. More like, bye. What if I just ended the stream? See you. I actually will be ending it fairly soon. What are my priorities at here? Oh, okay. I see what happened here. All on you, actually. Wait, what? How did that happen? Oh, I guess I'll have to change these over, right? Now that I've separated them. I guess all the rest of these are sunkens. Oh, and then I have to figure out when to request the Evo chamber. I guess after 5. Oh, this is where the add build stuff comes in. Although I think for this particular thing I can do something a little bit different. Okay, cool. So the staging stuff should be fine. Obviously the main town stuff needs to be rewritten. And the expansions need to be rewritten in terms of the build threads. And then after that, I just have to implement the new attack system. Upgrades were fine already, so those would be good. I guess what I can do there is I can change these to 88. Just so that they're a little bit different. Hatcheries are a little bit more. higher priority. But yeah, at this point, it's just right in the head. I might even do this later on tonight, but at the very least, I'll tinker around with it tomorrow morning. Try and finish the Zerg AI for Cordovan and charge headfirst into the Zerg AI for Redwood. After the Zerg are done, these first, well, the only Zerg players on this map, I actually won't need to exhaustively reimagine everything else. I mean, I guess it might help me to do base layouts again, or at least look at the existing base layouts that are there from the original or the older draft and see if they need to be adapted or what could be done to make them more efficient. But I remember them being pretty good, so I'll probably just end up changing priorities, maybe tech path or something like that. But yeah, I'm not really that worried about it for now, so I think that's it. And with that, I will see y'all later. Bye.